Well, as usual, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's nice to be with you again. Last week, we dealt with the concept of politics. I tried to develop the concept in a very, very generic way, a way such that it could be applied to all societies at all times, in all places. That's a pretty immodest task to set. And I don't like to say that I was successful at it, because that would make me sound really like an egomaniac. But I did try to set out some ideas that it could serve as a basis for applying to all societies at all times, under all conditions. I said that politics is the process by which a society determines, distributes, arranges its public goods and benefits. We define a society as a group of people who are brought together, bound together by what I referred to in two ways. I said it was an imagined reality, and I also just described society as a shared reality, as a shared subjective reality. The point is, a society is a group of people who hold together because they see themselves as holding together. And I said, I think this leads us to the concept of identity. So when we talk about politics, we are in a very real sense talking about identity as much as anything else, which is why politics means so much to us, because we're talking about ourselves, who and what we are. We also said last week that in order to bring about this process of defining and distributing public goods and services and so on, that societies create institutions. And we said that institutions consist of people, they consist of rules, they consist of buildings, they consist of physical plants and a whole range of things. But mostly they consist of procedures, ways of doing things over and over and over again that are in accord with the values of the society concerned. We said also that it is by government that power is transformed into authority. We noted we obey the law, or at least I said I obey the law, in part because I don't want to pay the consequences of not obeying the law. But on the other hand, I think it's right that the Congress of the United States do certain things, that it makes certain laws. I think it's right that the President of the United States do certain things, make certain laws. And I think it's right that the Supreme Court says certain things that it should say. In other words, I believe that the power our government has is legitimate. And if we have legitimate power, then we have something called authority. In a place like Haiti, government has power. It does not have a lot of authority, because it must rely on force and coercion in order to get things done. We don't always have to do that. Or if we do, the amount of compulsion that we use is in fact limited compared to other places. The Chinese government, the Soviet, the Russian government, relies upon power in order to get its way. There is a relative absence of authority, though that has changed. So I hope I've made that connection clear. Then we said, we mentioned something like 5 principles of politics. We said that politics is rational. In other words, we set out to get something and we plan a strategy to get it. What we do today relates to what we hope to do and get tomorrow. We said that politics is institutional. Our competition for the goods of society, in fact, occurs within the framework of certain kinds of institutions, which we have defined as people, structures, rules, and all of those kinds of things. And the nature of these institutions defines how we'll go about doing politics. If the institutions are authoritarian, as in North Korea, that leads to one kind of political behavior, and not very much of that. But if the institutions are broadly liberal democratic, as they are in this country, or in England, or France, or Italy, or anywhere in Western Europe, then that leads to different kinds of behavior. So politics is institutional. The third thing we said is that politics is collective. We don't do it ourselves. We can't do it ourselves. By definition, because it involves the whole society, we have to cooperate with other people. Or if we don't cooperate with them, we have to at least figure out how we're going to neutralize them or deal with them. Politics is very definitely collective. And then we said that politics is policy-oriented. Despite what you think, what we think, what I often think, people don't get into politics just to get their jollies. You know, people get into politics because they want certain things. And the things they want, we call policies. They want the government to implement certain kinds of policies. And so everything that politics does is designed to produce a particular endpoint, which we, as neutral, intellectual political scientists, refer to as policies, as policies. Other people, less sophisticated than we, may refer to it as pork. They may refer to it as rewards. They may refer to it as stolen property. But the fact is, it's a policy. And then the last thing we said about politics was that history is very, very important. I went out on a limb and made a deliberate overstatement and said, history determines the way a society goes about doing its politics. Now, I'm going to get pilloried for this, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I think that we cannot understand the way any society does politics unless we understand the history of its people. That's why I went into Asian studies, because I wanted to understand how Chinese history and culture made their view of politics and their way of politics different from America's way of politics. And it worked both ways. By asking that question in the Chinese context, I was better able to understand what went on in the American context. And by asking the question in the American context, I had a framework, a much richer framework for dealing with the question in China. So that's what we did last week. And I hope that if you have any questions, I'd like to hear about that. I don't want to spend any more time on that just now. Rather, what I would like to do is to pick up on the idea of history. By now you will realize that I feel that history is very, 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 very important. And I want to give as much attention to it today as I possibly can. And now that I've said that history is slightly or moderately important, I'd like to begin a discussion of it and to try to illustrate exactly how that is so.